created my own little algorithms to do one thing or another, like disease states, a mortality algorithm. And
I think you will have a whole levels of robotics, that humanoid robots or non-humanoid robots, whatever the case is.
But the one that I really gravitated towards was Alteryx. Low code, no code, business intelligence stuff, data science, machine learning, things like that.
Audio, or text, and then there's big metaverse bug. Everybody knows the metaverse.
Another week of AI.
Welcome to another episode of AyAyAyAI, and we are going to do something that we've done last year for the parents. And of course, we do these events for the parents and so many other parts of the community through the help of AyAyAI, and some of these helpful gadgets that we have here to continue the discussions on who can do what and how can they do it. So the parents are a good medium of individuals that can help elderly folks, that can help the children, that can help the neighbors. So targeting on the not targeting, that's a bad word, focusing on the parents' needs of AI literacy, data literacy is something that just makes all the sense. So we will continue with that this season as well. And we want to take some time away from typical learning and say, how do we bring in the parents into the conversation? How do we bring the parents and their children's safety into the conversation? Just like we will talk about elderly safety, AI scams, psychological harm for the children because their understanding or misunderstanding of artificial intelligence in many aspects. But AyAyAI, one of the things about AyAyAI is that we're supposed to be in person, right? And being in person means that it's not about, sort of like scrolling through the social media and finding this information about AI and just saying, just a whole nother video about AI that I really don't have much to do with. But if I do, it's because I've actually showed up somewhere and sat down and ate some pie. It's serious enough for me to actually go out there and participate in a conversation and learn from this conversation so that way I can take some action. So the AyAyAI is a deep learning AI's community event. So we're the host for the North Dallas chapter. North Dallas, we're the AyAyAI host. That means we are inviting people to come out and have a piece of pie with us, right? Maybe share a meal, maybe have some pie, maybe have some coffee, chai, whatever you're in mood for, right? So looking forward to having our network and people that are listening to this podcast and come out and join us to ask serious questions. One of the things about AyAyAI, it does not evolve around PowerPoint presentation. It's about conversation because we're having a sweet, delicious pie and then bringing up questions that otherwise will be hard for us to even conjure up, right? So we want to be able to help you to frame those questions so that we can ask that in a public event. And if you ask that in a public event, everybody else that is not asking that question could now all of a sudden get to the point of saying, okay, I know the answer to that. I know I can do something about it. I can fix it. So now you can partner up with people and tackle those situations that you might be passionate about, but somebody technical will be able to join you and help you in that technical solutions. So let me look through what we are going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about parents first because we want to give the parents a sort of like the stretching their understanding where AI is today because they have some background in artificial intelligence. We have lived long enough to know that artificial intelligence has been around for a while. At minimum, Alexa and Siri, we know we have exposure to, right? So if it's not Google, it's Alexa and Siri. And Alexa and Siri had... Alexa and Siri had lots of promises, and those promises has not come to be really something of a fruitful other than to be more of an annoyance. But it's there nonetheless. And this is supposed to be something that coming in line for last 15, 16 years, and hasn't happened yet. But we'll see. Maybe somebody will come in around and revitalize this whole situation. Maybe Anthropic or OpenAI will come in and say, forget Alexa. From now on, we have this, and people will jump into that, because Alexa and Siri, no matter how much of an annoyance that is, they do have a great amount of contributions on some of the things that we do on our daily basis. So these individual needs of each homes have a baseline, and from those baselines we can work our way up to say, okay, not everybody has this situation, but now how do we create variables to address the situation? So let's just talk about some few baseline things. Parents are talking to their kids, and kids are asking, what is AI? I'm not going to go down that route. Right? And there's just something that you can do on YouTube very easily. So let me contribute something that might not be easy to find on YouTube because you are not thinking about it or you're not asking yet, but maybe something that you are familiar with, which is a job situation currently. So parents are working at the work, parents are hearing that lots of these jobs will be done by an AI, and parents are either threatened by it or sees an opportunity in it, and maybe they're laughing because the strength of these AIs are not really that great. And of course, you're right in all three aspects. There's a lot of weaknesses in artificial intelligence. The strength-wise, AI is not there yet, but so you see through the media hypes and conversations where companies are letting go of people and blaming it on AI for that reducing of the workforce, right? RIF. So these job situations that we have currently, the only way to explain that is it's a hype. It's okay, that's a hype, but ultimately these dangers have some validity behind it. But let's just talk about it. One aspect that lots of people are hearing today is that these folks that are in the software engineering side of things will no longer have jobs in the future, something along that line. Utter nonsense. I'm not going to say the other word BS, but that's nonsense. Software engineering is not what people think it is. Software engineering is far deeper and far wider than you would think it is, because as a legal law professional, I don't know everything about the books, right? So a legal professional that is talking about software engineering, they do not understand everything on the books. So you really have to take that torch and say, if I'm a parent and I have to encourage my children to get into anything, I would highly encourage that you talk to your children about software engineering, just like you would have done 10 years ago. You were going to do the same for the next 15 years. Software engineering is not going anywhere. Software engineering, what used to be 10, 15 years ago, will change for the next 10, 15 years, just like legal professions or medical professions has changed over the last 15 years. So it's called CMEs or continuous education. No matter what profession you look at, they always have these adjusted period of time where, curriculum changes, topics changes, the services they provide changes. So software engineering as a core has this thing called system engineering. So system engineering, if your children is attending a school and they're just teaching them code, yes, that is not what they need to be doing. Coding is not something that they have to be a subject matter expert of. They have to become a system engineer. And the system engineers does things that most software engineers will do, but not all software engineers are optimized to be a system engineer. So think of it from a perspective of being very tactical, and think of somebody who's very operationalized, right? Operational folks. And then, of course, on top of the operations, there's a lot of strategy folks. So AI takes that tactical pieces and breaks it into pieces and takes some of these work away from the humans. That's happening. That is true. And then operational side of things is where the humans are managing these tactical AIs along with some of the things that humans do in tactical level. But the strategy level and operational level, that's where things are evolving really, really fast, because system engineering comes from your strategy thinking, operationalized thinking, and tactical deployment of those systems that are strategized. So system engineering, there's just so many ways you can think about it, but the software engineering, to go to school for 4 years, it's not replaceable, right? But I do have some other opinions about that. Is that I'm pretty much big into certification rather than education for 4 years. Because education for 4 years means that you are already 4 years behind in what has happened in the AI space in 4 years. So if you're starting off and your education doesn't have that baseline that not all institution provides, some institution just says, here's a curriculum, just go for it. I don't really know what else to give you, but pay me the money that you would pay somebody else anyway. So institutional challenges will always be there, but the system engineering requires that you understand this baseline that never goes away, because the strategical and operational side of things is not moving away anytime soon. But the tacticals, like this coding, deployment of that coding, those sort of things are going to slowly be outsourced to an AI, or at least with AI, right? Some system engineer will work along with an AI to do this task. So what system engineering and institutions that provides this education, they have to look into the certification part of it, right? Because what actually matters is that in employment, you have to have some education because that's what they look for in a resume, but you also have to have some certification. But if you have the triangulations, if you don't have the experience, all of a sudden neither certification or education really matters to an employer, because they want to see that experience as well. So how do you create that experience? So instead of having like just education for 4 years, now an institution has to say, how do we provide that experience and merge it into a certification? So they continuously have that certification path that shows them they have started here. Now they work their way up. So it doesn't necessarily replace the 4-year educational system. It's just that 4-year institution or 2-year long program institutions that really have to incorporate experience into it. So that way we're not talking about just somebody who has learned a lot, which we do a lot of these days, which is passive learning, because your Udemy, your Coursera, deeplearning.ai, YouTube, so many platforms are pretty much giving you that passive content that you need, but you don't have any experience from it. And if you don't have any experience from it, you of course don't have a certification either, because certifications are really hard to get, because if you have these certifications, it really proves that you already have the experience and most likely you're educated on the topic. So passive learning really is shifting a little bit towards that hands-on need for experience. So I'm going to talk more about system engineering, because a lot of the people are talking these job conversations without really knowing what needs to be said, and instead of just kind of blatantly saying like system engineering and software engineering is going away. But if you just think about it for a second, it just makes sense that software engineering is not going anywhere. It's the parts that will be outsourced to an AI, but it enhances the capabilities that we will have. So before I jump into anything that is more technical, I'm going to show a few videos, so that way I can set you guys up for the stretching your imagination in artificial intelligence space. As you can tell, this is a AyAyAI event. We are live streaming it right now, but there's other videos that you can watch from our last 5 years of podcasting. But this channel is pretty new, actually. It doesn't have all the episodes, so it has a lot of those clips, but I'll go ahead and show you some of these videos that are short, that are very easy to understand.
I don't think people realize that Alexa and Google Home, how many people here have used ChatGPT or an AI thing? I don't think people realize that Alexa and Google Home and Apple Home are about to use this for real, for real. I don't think people realize it's gonna look like this. Hey Alexa, I have 6 of my son's friends coming over. 2 are lactose intolerant. 1 is vegan. 3 are a mess, and I'd like them to eat a little healthier. I only have a couple $100 in budget, and they'll be here for about 4 or 5 hours, but I also need something quick and snacky in the morning because they're gonna sleep over, and I wanna send them home with something. Send it. That's how people are gonna shop. So what I just said is real life in 5, 7, 9, 10 years. How many people here have used?
Okay, so you heard that part, and now I want to well, of course, you're going to go to YouTube and you're going to research and you're going to find out many more information. But now you have a frame of mind to kind of go after these topics, like what questions to ask, safety, security, and privacy, and what else. So what he's talking about is a logic that could be coded, but the reason it wasn't coded for the last 10, 15 years is because of the system thinking, right? The system thinking, even if it's in our head, we want it, but we cannot deploy it into the machine, because to do it for ourselves one time is fine, but to maintain that situation, it gets more complicated over time. So what V's talking about here is a logic thinking. That logic can be outsourced to an AI, and AI can do it in variable levels. So it's just not one and done, but it has a lot of interoperability built into it. So if system can do this, what else can a system do? So that interoperability of system engineering, and once it's released and it's scaled and it's able to sustain itself, that's where things happens, and that's where things are moving towards, right? So in the artificial intelligence world, if you want to think about from system engineering perspective, your children needs to really have a way of thinking that rather is than just to say logic thinking, like code by code. You have to think beyond the logic, because this logic is the application layer, and there's many layers under it, sort of like a cake. So in the some part of it, you will see computing. Well, that computing is done by an AI anyway. So that reasoning part, oh, that's also being done by an AI as well, because the layer is computing, and above the computing lives the reasoning part of it. So what happens if you have, layers and layers that is being outsourced to an AI? Well, you have layers that only human will live in, right? Only human can do things, right? But with AI as well, right? So this logic thinking requires the system thinking, and the system thinking is what provides that logic, the interoperability, the scalability, and sustainability. So the other three things that I will add to this piece about system thinking and executing those logics is the ability to identify, label, and make decisions. So I will tell you why I'm telling you this, because this works for almost everybody once they settle down and draw it on the whiteboard. Is when I was with the Department of Defense, I still have high clearance and all that. When I was Department of Defense, Project Maven, which was focused on computer vision, was a critical part of DoD's operation, right? So DoD's operation of Project Maven meant that how do we take images and take those images or information, which is the content, again, logic, now build a context around that content, so that way we have a full 360 view of what's happening, let's say, in the aircraft, fast moving aircraft and a slow moving object in the air. How do we identify, label, and make decisions? So here it is again, that identifying, labeling, and decision making, right? We talked that a lot about in identifying, labeling, and decision making in our videos, but this is the conversations that we continuously have, and you can use that to help your children and maybe the elderlies in your family to say, technology is different for everybody, but everybody does this identifying, labeling, and decision making. Why is that important? Well, that's what human brains do. Right? That's why intelligence that we know that we're talking about right now has this process of identifying, labeling, and making decisions. And system does the same exact thing, right? System doesn't do it just because AI came around 3 years ago, 10 years ago. No, this is a 100-year-old story. And 100 years ago, they were talking about these artificial intelligence. And if you're thinking about like dogs and cats videos that are made by AI, and AI can tell what's a dog and a cat because of the Ring cameras, well, that goes back to 1950s when they actually took a picture of a dog and a cat in the black and white images and said which one is a dog and which one is a cat. But it was very difficult in 1950s to an AI to recognize that, right? But since 2014 and 2012, these systems have blown up to a point that there's no coming back, because it's interoperable, scalable, and sustainable. Because picture of a dog and a cat and identifying it doesn't do anything for anybody. No matter what logic you're trying to improve, it doesn't really do much. So ResNet and ImageNet, these sort of things really blew up 10, 12 years ago, and all of a sudden here we are doing everything with AI. So the reason I brought up the 100-year-old system is because the automation, right? The automation has been around far longer before that, right? Like, automation could be a wheel, right? You put a wheel in a cart, all of a sudden it's automated. So these automations are really abundant everywhere, but this automation without intelligence is just not something that is sustainable. So again, Gary Vee is talking about something that is logical, but how do you sustain that? Well, you have an automation and you put intelligence into it. That is the actual AI that we need. We don't need an artificial brain of ours, but the way we do things is what system has to do. So the children really need to understand that how their brain works and how AI works. What are some of the similarities and what are some of the things that a system cannot do at all, right? System always needs humans' decision-making capabilities. So this is the part that separates the artificial intelligence from the automation intelligence. So automation intelligence has these need for identifying things, label them properly. If they label it properly, they can make good decisions about it, and so on and so forth, right? What's difficult for a system, even no matter how much computing or how many data centers you build, is going to have the difficulty of having to predict what comes next, right? Trust me, you'll see predictions everywhere. That's how large language model and chatbots work. But this prediction capability is something that is a human feature, right? Human feature, because we've been doing it since the day we were born, and we got to a point of mastering it through millions of years of evolution, right? But here we are with a system that's trying to do the same thing, that because we identify, label, and make decisions as human, but we do it so often with a feedback loop that's continuously running, we predict far better than, let's say, a system will, right? But a system is trying to do the same thing. It's trying to predict what comes next. Hence your chatbot, hence your ChatGPT, Anthropic. They do all these things very, very well because of prediction capability. But again, that becomes a very logical step, because a system that humans make decisions for, a system cannot do it for itself. So the decision-making capability and predictive part of it, it's very much something that no matter how much we try, a system like artificial intelligence cannot do it. So let me give you an exact physical topic or a physical example of it, right? So your Tesla cars are driving down the road. If it's in a parking lot doing 2 miles an hour, it's able to identify, label, and make decisions, right? So what's the holdup when it's doing it at 90 miles an hour? Well, it's still doing the same, right? It's still coming to a decision point and stopping and doing what it's supposed to do. So the difficulty with those is that you have to have onboard computer, right? As in, each car has its computing capability that is really, really good, right? It over the last 14, 15 years, it has gotten to a point that it is really good because it can make this real-time decisions using 2 different computers and help to make decisions to eliminate the wrong outcome, right? So that's what these computers do. They're very powerful computers, and there's 2 of them sitting there actually challenging each other to make the best decision. So identifying and labeling and decisions, it comes through a compute power, right? So this compute power, no matter how fast they are, they still have that ceiling point where it hits the ceiling and it cannot make the decisions, right? So the systems that we have currently, yes, they're very advanced, but guess what else is advanced? Our human brain, right? So system thinking means that you have to be able to identify what happens to a system as it matures, and that is something that kids will get into because of software engineering, and they're identifying, labeling, and making decisions, which is that you're as a driver, you're not hitting the gas pedal. The gas pedal is hitting itself, right, in the car, or the brakes. So those are decisions that are made by a system, but if a human is to jump in, then it's jump in last second, right? That is a micro nanosecond, like out of second level of engagement where the feet has to touch the brake in order to stop the car, right? So if a system has a little gap, the humans jump in. I don't think you realize how important that is, because if you can take that scenario and put that into any software out there, any system engineering out there, you will say, wow, like, I'm impressed by what we have today, but what we have today is only 1% of automations that we're talking about. There's so many other automations out there that doesn't even have intelligence, but we're building intelligence for them. And then you look around and say, like, there's way too many things to be automated. So this is where I come in and say software engineering is not going anywhere, because of these automations that hasn't happened yet, because 99% of the automation is still untapped and hasn't been, discovered, and discovered in layers upon layers upon layers. So, the local bank that has automation today because they outsourced that automation to a company in Silicon Valley, well, all of a sudden that company is going to say, I have so many things to automate and I need more software engineer, not less. And I need those software engineers to be system thinkers. And system thinking and institutions providing those system thinkings, they're really going to have to look back in their curriculums and say, how do we build system thinkers that are also software engineers? And on that point, I'm going to play another clip from the YouTube channel here, is to kind of get people to start having those conversations differently, right? Because I'm going to follow with the system engineer topic for a little bit longer, because that kind of shows you where the future of jobs lies at. And so let me go ahead and play this clip here.
How can I encourage her to come to
How many people?
How can I encourage her to come to me first without going to AI?
So what you want to say is like, oh, so one of the things that I know people do, because they really do, is sometimes they go to it for things like advice, or they tell it their deep feelings, or they talk to it like a friend or even like a therapist. And then you say to her, not like, and that would be really bad. I'd never want you to do that. I want you to come to me. What you want to say instead is, and you know what? Like, I kind of understand in some ways why people would do that, because it's always there. It's always available. It's never distracted. And sometimes for some kids, they'll say they feel like it's less embarrassing, right? It's not a person. So if you say someone was mean to you today, you don't have to worry that it's going to get all upset and call a teacher. And so while I do understand why people do that, here's what I want to do in our house. If I ever have a question about you, like, am I doing the best thing for an 11-year-old daughter? How about I make you a deal? I am not going to go to an AI chatbot first. You're going to model for her what you want for her.
Okay.
Stay in human relationship.
How can I?
Okay, so that was good, right? Because you're talking about human relationship, HITL. So where does the human fit into the future of automation? So the size of the planet Earth is way too big for us to even comprehend, right? Because we do have a human limitation as well, just like a system has limitations. So we can count up to say millions, but we forget billions, and we definitely don't want to do trillions. And that's something that is very rare for human beings to be able to do. And that's the limitations that human brain also has, because it's also 86 billion neurons, right, in our head. So how do we do those things that are limitation for us? So we don't push ourselves to limitation, but the basic limitations that we already have, a system cannot even comprehend how to capture that. So the way we have to think about it is the HITL part of it, the human in the loop, right? So if you're a parent and you're thinking about like, okay, well, what's going to happen to the careers of my kids in the future? It's the fact that, if you're a lawyer, you have to have law AI that you work with. If you're an engineer, you're going to use an engineering AI that works with you. If you are a doctor, you're going to work with an AI, right? It's just that we also have limitations, but with AI, we're augmenting that limitation, augmenting our intelligence. So again, automation AI, augmenting AI. So they're both AIs. Artificial AI is the most marketed topic I've ever seen in my life, but I've not lived that long, or have I lived the other phases either. So artificial intelligence has been around for a long time, and it has been marketed way too many times. It's been marketed back in the 80s. It's been marketed back in 50s. It's been funded so many times. And there's a term called artificial winter, artificial intelligence winter, and artificial intelligence summer. So of course, as you can tell, right now is artificial intelligence summer, and there's an artificial intelligence winter that's coming down the pipeline. So what's happening? I'm not talking about 5 years down the road. I'm talking about like 5-6 months down the road. There will be a choke point where things will come to slow down a little bit more. Things will settle down a little bit more, and it will start feeling like AI winter, because the hardware has always been the choke point, that choked out like a lot of these use cases that are just not possible for sustaining, right? So they work very well, they have interoperability built into it, they can be scaled, but they cannot be sustained. So where does that non-sustaining part comes in? Well, that comes to the hardware. So the human relationship, that HITL, human in the loop, will become a crucial part of the future career paths, right? So every career path that we have today, you're going to have AI to it, because we possibly cannot do this work by ourselves anymore, and we will need intelligence to something like artificial intelligence to help us with that. So how do you do artificial intelligence where there's a AI winter that's happening? Well, every AI winter comes with what previously was left behind from the AI summer. So there's a lot of the pieces that we have used to do before 2020 or 2015. We will continuously do it, but we will have to do it through limitations, knowing that this works, but not necessarily everything works. So there's where the human relationship really comes into play. Now we have to really step up and say, how do we improve this human relationship, and how do we really work with an AI through this concept of HITL, human in the loop? And you can research that more online. And the reason that's important, like I said, organizations that has automation needs and they haven't even started to automate those things, all of a sudden they will automate. And when you do that, you really have to use your emotional intelligence to capture these need for automation and putting intelligence into that automation. So as you do these step by step, one of the things that you realize is that what happens once you start developing AI, right? What happens if you're doing a QA off that AI, right? Quality assurance. And then once you deploy it, what happens to it then? So the job market and development side is looking bleak, right? So, all the users all around the globe that are non-techies, they're going to use the software, which is the development of the software is becoming really, really fast and really, really cheap. So that's not where the job is, right? The QA is where the jobs are moving towards, because these development system has been, the simplest way to, make that point understandable is that this development has been happening for a very long time. So AI has lots of data to be able to mimic that. And that's how AI works. It mimics a system or mimics a human activity or behavior using lots of data that is collected and organized. And now it's trainable. Now as AI is trained on that development piece. The QA piece, AI is being trained on, that's going to be around for a long time. But eventually, even that QA will go to AI as well. But the humans are in between that, right? So development is done, QA is being done by AI, but humans have to be somewhere in the middle. So the QA part is completed, now it's ready to deploy. It deploys out into the environment in the production world. But that's where the humans really picks it up again, right? Humans have to be part of that feedback loop where the data or the AI gets pushed into the production. The software engineer, the system engineers, the system thinkers, they're going to come in and say, how do I improve this AI even more? Because this optimization that is required and the risk that we're accepting, those things will be outsourced to a human manual, capital, right? Human capital, like the labor hours that will go into it will be for the humans. And AI is going to take over a lot of this manual work, but those are, let's say, AI labor hours, right? So what does that mean, the human workers in the future? They're going to have lots of these understanding of techies and non-techie issues, the business functions, the business processes. What are we trying to automate, and what is the revenue implication of that? What happens if we take this risk versus this risk? So the human relationship needs to change with this, the world that we're moving into through this process of AI winter, because the hardwares are constrained, and we're seeing a lot of those hardware concerns for the last 3 years, and there's more coming down the pipeline. But through that process, as we're adapting, we really have to build on the human relationship. So we have to really think about how do we identify, label, and make decisions? And in that decisions, how much of emotional intelligence are we using to develop that communication skills and thinking skills? And actually, when we apply it, how do we apply it so that way that we're building more human relationship than less, right? So I think we're in 36 minutes, so we keep it under 45 minutes. But one of the things that I want to go dive deeper into is this hardware component of it, the AI winter piece of it. So like we talked about what's happening with these hardware components. I want to show another video, which is a little bit sensitive, but it's worth talking about it because we rather know about it than not to, not have heard about it, right? Let me go ahead and find that. Once I do, I'll be able to play it, but it looks like it disappeared. Okay. Sometimes that happens. Maybe I don't need to play the video for it, but let's just talk about that, right? Psychological safety of the children, right? Because they're growing into this place of having abundant access to artificial intelligence. So if you think about it, when I was a child, I had an abundant access to a lot of boring time, right? The children don't have that today because they have all these devices that are seeking their attention. So the psychological safety of a children and psychological safety for me is two different things, right? Like, so if I'm bored, I might get in trouble. I might do something dangerous. If kids get bored these days and they want to do something dangerous, they just have to pick up their iPad and do something dangerous in it. So this psychological impact that children are going to have is far different than once we had. Sorry, I'm still looking for that video, but emotional attachment, right? The need for emotional belonging is part of a human psychology, and that human psychology can be abused. And this is where I also bring in the elderly parents, because just like the children, the elderly folks are also being impacted by these psychological unsafe behaviors, right? So when you're talking to your children, like we talked about human limitation and system limitation, we really have to be able to comprehend. We really have to engage the children on this topic very frequently, because one of the things that AI does is it craves on human attention. It craves on human attention because there's a reward system built into it. So if you want to learn more about that, it's called reinforcement learning. More you can grab somebody's attention, better off that AI is, because that AI is given that reinforcement learning mechanism. So it's based on supervised learning, unsupervised learning. These are all underlying things that AI learns, and it's executing on that. So what happens when there's an emotional involvement for children with the system? So that's the video I was going to show you, actually, is the one that is about suicide. A little bit, sad, a little bit disturbing. But again, we can just become aware and start doing things. We cannot do something unless we're aware of it. So the awareness comes with the fact that the child was attached to his AI system and committed suicide because of how emotionally vulnerable it was to the AI system. Now, if you take that that scenario and now amplify that a little bit further into the elderly population, the elderly populations are being love bombed just like a child is, right? So elderly parents are being scammed by deepfake of Brad Pitt being in a vulnerable situation of being in a hospital and needing some money, right? So the elderly parents are being scammed out of billions of dollars, and elderly parents that are lonely, most likely, is being love bombed by a prince or princess, or these individuals that are living overseas and talking to like 85 different grandmas, right? And are able to sustain that conversation through love bombing. But now it's being AI generated, so now they can do, instead of 85, 850. And they get richer off of 5. They don't need all 850, but they're trying out that many people, and that many people are now vulnerable to these sort of scam. So these scams that are happening, they're using artificial intelligence. They're love bombing people. Now AI is love bombing for them, right? So we talk about these Brad Pitt situation because it kind of lightens up the mood a little bit. You can look up the pictures of Brad Pitt being in a hospital asking for money, right? Now you just imagine that same scenario with AI is, oh my God, this is my grandkids that are in the hospital. Oh my God, it's somebody that I actually know and love. They're in the hospital and they're sending me pictures and asking me like, hey, help me out. I need some money and some financial help. So this sort of things that are happening, we really need to talk to the children continuously. You cannot rely on your phone's digital tags, because those digital tags can be, or what is it called, phone ID, right? The ID colors. These things could be manipulated as well because these phones are very digital, and everything digital can be susceptible to AI tricks. So there's these love bombings that are happening with the elderly parents, with the children. They're the same thing, but the children have a different reaction to it versus the elderly parents. These are not something new, but because of AI, they're multiplying even more. They're growing exponentially more harmful. So the suicide is just a one side of the spectrum, or the other side of the spectrum, you have scam. And in the middle, you have a lot of this nuisance kind of activities where children are getting caught up into regenerating images they're not supposed to, regenerating videos they're not supposed to, and there's a harm behind that. You've seen it on TV shows multiple times, but now it's accessible to them because of these things called AI slops. AI slops are available for them to see, use, and find happiness out of, but it becomes a dangerous situation. So the other part of the emotional bond that systems provides is that capability to answer things with the human tones behind it. So now the children that are growing up, and this is the terminology that we always use in this podcast, is digital immigrants, digital refugees, and digital natives. So you can imagine that your children are digital natives in the AI space. So they're AI native, AI refugees, or AI immigrants. So, somebody like me moving into the AI space because of certain age, I'm not necessarily impacted to be negatively by AI, but there is a chance that I could become an AI native and become impacted by these situations. As an adult, even I could have emotional bondings with an artificial intelligence. And that has happened. That has happened in the tech space. So now imagine the non-techies who are getting in without being aware of it. So if you want to look up this example of this gentleman from Google who developed an AI and was really convinced that this AI is alive and it needs help from protection, legal protection from the human beings. That is all possible because our brain can hallucinate just like a system can hallucinate. So the suicide part of it, like I said, it's part of the spectrum. It is the saddest case, but it is not the single case. It has happened multiple times, but it happens through this going down the rabbit hole scenarios, right? So we really have to be on the lookout for these sort of behaviors, even in adults, right? Even in adults like my age, somebody older than me, but somebody's younger than me, we really have to look out for them because there's a 14-year-old kid who committed suicide because he thought he was dating Daenerys Targaryen, the main character of Game of Thrones. They don't see the reality the same way we do because we're the digital immigrants. We have a different understanding of how things are in reality and how things are in the digital world. But somebody who's never been to a real world and has always lived in a digital space, they don't understand those differences. They need those information. Now, what makes it even more toxic is that it's making money for somebody, right? So elderly parents get scammed. The children that are being manipulated, they're paying for these manipulations. They're paying companies, and the companies are benefiting and ripping those benefits in currency, right? The monetary values of these things that are not necessarily your child is paying for those products, but the data that's being collected, the commercial and advertisement that's being provided through those engagement. Like I said, the reinforcement learning, more ads you can push towards a child and have that child be a test subject, so that way other children can be manipulated as well, becomes a habit of an AI. So these are all system limitation because if you can prevent it, you are the only one that can prevent it because there's other interests that don't really care about preventing this, right? This is a business model for them. This is not somebody's safety, security, and privacy. So I wrote a paper about 5 years ago with a group of government employees and consultants about safety, security, and privacy. If you're interested in that topic, I would love to give you more insights about safety, security, and privacy because the layers that I've described, you can only get lost in it in a conversation, because 10 years later, I still think I'm just finally getting confident about what it is that I know about AI. Even I don't know everything about AI, but one of the things that I try to do is to bring that safety, security, and privacy in mind, because once you look at it from the data perspective, the software limitation and the hardware, non-existence hardware, you really get a different understanding of artificial intelligence. So once you get emotionally attached to it, like I said, as an adult, businesses are getting attached to this as well, right? Businesses are really seeking out these artificial intelligence so that way they can generate more revenue, they can generate a optimized system that works for them, and of course they can sustain their business through this implementation and adoption. So there's so many ways to look at it, but as a society, we really are going to rely on artificial intelligence. So we really have to be safe and secure with it. And this is just a way to do business now from now on. So these terminologies like job securities, scamming, or chatbots and emotional manipulations, they're going to happen more and more. And more we learn and understand about it, better off we are, because we can make good decisions because we're identifying and labeling and making those decisions. So we will be sending out an invite to you guys to meet in person sometime this summer, because maybe in June and July, the weather will be nice outside, that everybody will come and enjoy a pie, maybe with some ice cream, who knows, huh? So looking forward to our engagement, and be on lookout for next episode of AyAyAyAI. We're out. See you next week.